Well, the rise of cyber as a means and method of warfare is now a real possibility. It only activates the law of armed conflict when it constitutes an attack in the course of that armed conflict. This will be dealt with in the next module. What we are dealing with in this module is the international law applicable to cyber operations mounted by states or non-state actors that do not amount to a cyber attack, but nonetheless can result in genuine negative consequences. One such example was the attack on Sony in the US late in 2014. The incident I will refer to as the Sony hack began on November 22, 2014, when it became apparent that Sony Pictures' computer system had been compromised. The BBC reported that skulls appeared on employee screens with a message which threatened to expose secrets from data obtained in hacking. Large quantities of confidential information and company assets were stolen. Multiple films were then illegally uploaded to file sharing sites. Confidential employee information was leaked and private emails were made public. A group identifying themselves as the Guardians of Peace, who have been linked to the North Korean state-run Bureau 121, claimed responsibility for the hack. The group also made threats against theatres set to conduct showings of Sony Pictures' controversial satire, The Interview, a film that had been criticised by the North Korean Foreign Ministry. Another example is the interference with the cyber infrastructure of Estonia in 2007, following the removal of the Soviet War Memorial from the centre of the city that we have already covered in the first module. In that instance, there were numerous denial of service attacks on government websites, defacement on many websites, botnet attacks and distributed denial of service attacks undertaken. The origins of the attacks were tracked to over 150 other countries, although a number were also tracked to a number of Russian government institutions. What does international law say about such interference? In essence, international law provides a number of prohibitions of increasing significance relating to external interference. The varying significance of the gravity of the interference speaks to the type of responses that are permitted under international law. A number of these grounds were articulated by the International Court of Justice in the 1986 Nicaragua case. Although that case was concerned with physical activity, not cyber, it still provides a useful foundation. At its most basic, interference with another state's sovereignty can amount to a violation of international law. Hence, overflying national airspace without permission or non-innocent passage within the territorial sea of a coastal state constitute examples of a violation of sovereignty and hence a violation of international law. In the context of cyber operations, it matters greatly what the state undertaking the violation is doing. Listen to Professor Schmidt as he details 3 examples of apparent cyber interference that do, or in his opinion do not, amount to a violation of sovereignty.
When do you violate the sovereignty of another state? We're looking at that in a process called the Tallinn 2.0. It's an update to the Tallinn manual. And in fact, I just came back last week from looking at that. And we believe there are 3 situations. The first situation is where one state, and we're only talking states here, not non-state actors, where one state conducts a cyber operation in a second state, and that cyber operation causes some sort of damage. Something breaks, someone is injured. The computer doesn't work anymore, the computer doesn't function. I believe most international law experts would concur there's absolutely no question that that operation violated the sovereignty of the target state, even though the operation was launched from outside the territory of that state. Now, if we move down the continuum a little bit, we get to the situation where an operation is launched by a state from outside the territory of the target state, and instead of breaking something, physically something doesn't work, it no longer functions, the first state is manipulating ones and zeros, is changing data, is destroying data, is doing something inside the system of the territorial state. Now here, all international lawyers do not agree that this is a violation, but I do. I believe that's the functional equivalent of your agent being in the other state, doing something that the other state would not have that agent do. So in my view, that's a violation of sovereignty. And then there's the third situation where you're inside another state's system, but you're not manipulating data, altering data, changing data in any way that's necessarily adverse to the target state. For example, you put malware inside the system where you simply track the activities of that system. When does the system come on? When does it come off? To whom does it communicate? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here we have the smallest group of international lawyers that would say this is a violation of sovereignty. I'm not one of those that would say that's a violation, and the reason I don't accept that as a violation is that, to me, smacks of espionage, and we've never said that espionage is a violation of international law. The acts that underlie espionage may be a violation, but not espionage per se. So those are the two below the threshold likely violations of international. There are many more that I could come up with. For example, we're sitting here in Newport, Rhode Island. We see the sea out here. That's the American territorial sea. If a warship from another state comes into our territorial sea and conducts cyber operations against the War College, then in that case, that would violate our sovereignty, our territoriality, because it would not be what is known as innocent passage. It would be passage through our sea adverse to our interest. So there are many other violations I could give you, but the two big ones are intervention and a violation of sovereignty.